Springfield, Illinois, 1839. A town caught between wilderness and promise. Wooden storefronts, muddy streets, the echo of hooves on cobblestone. Into this growing settlement walks a tall, lean figure. Abraham Lincoln, 30 years old, his coat brushed with travel dust, his eyes calm but distant. He carries no wealth, only a worn briefcase and a reputation for honesty. As the wind sweeps through the square, his hat tilts slightly forward, shadowing a face both humble and determined. In a town still shaping its future, he came with little more than words and the will to make them matter. Faint sounds of wagons, footsteps, and a distant church bell set the tone. Steady, human, real. Lincoln's law office overlooked the courthouse, a simple room with books stacked unevenly, papers bound by twine, and light spilling in through a narrow window. Here, he worked tirelessly, sleeves rolled, quills scratching across parchment. His partner, William Herndon, watched in quiet respect as Lincoln's mind turned complex disputes into simple truths. His tools were not hammer and chisel, but pen and patience. Each case a lesson in fairness. Each verdict a mirror to the nation he would one day guide. The camera glides across the office, ink stains on his fingers, an open law book, and Lincoln, pausing to gaze at the courthouse steps outside. Across town, at a social evening lit by chandeliers and soft laughter, Mary Todd entered his world. She was refined, confident, with auburn hair pinned neatly, a calm yet curious gaze. Lincoln, awkward yet sincere, bowed slightly, his tall frame bent with careful grace. Their first exchange was brief but carried weight. She saw thoughtfulness in his silence. He saw brilliance in her composure. Two minds met where ambition and empathy found common ground. She saw not a rustic lawyer, but a man shaped by principle. The music softens, violins, laughter fading. Their eyes meet once more before parting. A promise. Days turn to months. Their conversations deepened. Letters exchanged. Long walks along Springfield's quiet lanes. Mary spoke of destiny and duty. Lincoln listened with quiet awe, though shadows of doubt often crossed his face. He questioned his worth, his means, his future, but her faith never faltered. In her belief, he found the courage to see beyond himself. In her steadiness, he learned that fear and faith often walk hand in hand. Camera, a candlelit close-up, Lincoln writing, pausing to stare at the flame, then folding a letter with care. Ambient sound, wind pressing against windows, soft crackle of the hearth. Winter, 1842. Snow drifts outside a modest house as family and friends gather. Lincoln stands at the altar beside Mary, his hand steady, his expression solemn yet serene. The room glows with the warmth of candlelight reflected in polished wood and lace. They began not in grandeur, but in quiet promise. Two lives bound by conviction, not comfort. The scene fades to Springfield streets under dawnlight. Lincoln walking toward his law office, coat buttoned, hat in hand. Children run past. A shopkeeper waves. He nods politely, his gaze steady on the horizon. Here, in this small town, he found both purpose and peace. Springfield settled into rhythm, law by day, letters by night. Lincoln's marriage brought balance he had long lacked. Inside their modest home, Mary arranged books, folded linens, and watched him read in silence, sometimes smiling at how deeply he disappeared into thought. The small dining table often became his study, filled with open volumes and drafts of speeches never spoken. Their life was not one of comfort, but of constancy. Each evening ended not in wealth, but in words, the building blocks of a mind preparing for greater purpose. Camera pans slowly from flickering lamplight to the window, where a quiet snow falls, time passing gently. By spring, Lincoln's work called him beyond Springfield. He rode horseback across the Illinois prairie, visiting distant courthouses and dusty towns. A leather satchel hung at his side, filled with case papers and stale bread. In taverns by dim firelight, he studied, joked with locals, and wrote notes that would become lessons in empathy and fairness. He learned the heart of his country not in marble halls, but on open roads, among farmers, merchants, and wanderers seeking justice in plain words. Camera, wide tracking shot of Lincoln riding past endless grass fields beneath a vast sky. Warm sunlight fading to dusk. Inside small frontier courtrooms, Lincoln's voice carried calm authority. He stood tall, coat unbuttoned, one hand resting on the table, his words deliberate, measured. He never mocked nor shouted. He reasoned. His peers respected him not for grandeur, but for grace. He believed truth needed no ornament, that law, like character, stood strongest when plain and fair. Cut to a close-up of his client, a farmer nodding gratefully as the verdict is read. Background, wood creaks, murmurs fade, sunlight filters through tall windows, simple justice quietly done. After weeks on the road, Lincoln returned to Springfield, weary but fulfilled. Mary greeted him at the doorway, her dress dusted with flour from baking, her eyes bright with warmth. He placed his hat on the peg, sat down by the fire, and listened to her recount letters, local news, and the laughter of neighbors. The world outside felt smaller then, and somehow kinder. Narrator vol. For all his wandering, this was home, a place where love anchored ambition, and silence offered its own kind of strength. Camera, medium shot of Lincoln resting near the hearth, boots stretched forward, gaze soft but thoughtful. Inside small frontier courtrooms, Lincoln's voice carried calm authority. He stood tall, coat unbuttoned, one hand resting on the table, his words deliberate, measured. He never mocked nor shouted. He reasoned. His peers respected him not for grandeur, but for grace. He believed truth needed no ornament, that law, like character, stood strongest when plain and fair. Cut to a close-up of his client, a farmer nodding gratefully as the verdict is read. Background, wood creaks, murmurs fade, sunlight filters through tall windows, simple justice quietly done. Springfield's nights often found Lincoln surrounded by books, philosophy, law, history, their spines worn, margins filled with notes. He read not to escape, but to understand. Sometimes Mary would find him still awake, eyes dim under candlelight, his expression lost somewhere between hope and responsibility. Narrator vol. He believed knowledge was not power, but duty, a way to hold the trust of others with steadier hands. Camera, soft tracking shot behind Lincoln's shoulder. Light flickers across handwritten pages. Quill moves slowly, deliberately. Outside, crickets hum, the quiet rhythm of a mind sharpening itself for the years ahead. By day, Lincoln walked the courthouse square, nodding to shopkeepers, greeting farmers by name, and listening more than he spoke. His height made him stand out. His humility made him approachable. At taverns, he told stories, not for laughter alone, but to teach. His humor carried wisdom, his pauses, conviction. Narrator VO. He learned that hearts are not won by argument, but by understanding. That leadership begins with listening. Camera, wide shot. Townsfolk leaning in as Lincoln gestures lightly, smile small but genuine. Ambient, chatter, distant fiddle music, warm afternoon light across the wooden square. The more he listened, the clearer the questions became. Illinois was changing. New settlers, new conflicts, new dreams. Lincoln began to feel the pull of civic life again, that sense of unfinished purpose. He discussed ideas with fellow lawyers, spoke cautiously at meetings, tested his words as though shaping a bridge between reason and belief. He did not seek greatness, but responsibility, the chance to use clarity where others used noise. Camera, medium shot. Lincoln standing near the courthouse steps at sunset, hat in hand, shadows long on the ground. At home, Mary sensed his restlessness. She would pour tea, sit across the table, and watch as his gaze drifted between the window and the future. Her words were steady, her confidence unshaken. She reminded him that purpose without courage meant little, and that his voice, calm, reasoned, moral, was needed beyond their small town. Where he saw doubt, she saw destiny. Her faith became the mirror through which he measured his own resolve. Camera, candlelit interior. Mary's soft reflection on the window glass beside Lincoln's silhouette, two lives framed in quiet strength. It was not a single moment that changed him, but the slow, patient gathering of conviction. One morning, as dawn broke over Springfield, Lincoln walked along the courthouse square, the air cold and clear. He paused, watching workers raise the flag above the roofline, sunlight catching its folds. Narrator vol. Every man is shaped by the times he lives in, but few rise to shape those times in return. As he turned toward his office, his step grew firmer, his expression quiet but resolved. Camera, wide establishing shot. Lincoln walking through town, his coat brushing against the wind, Springfield awakening behind him. Music, soft orchestral strings swell, signaling the start of purpose. After long years of courtroom battles and restless ambition, Abraham Lincoln finally slows his steps. The noise of politics fades behind him. The streets of Springfield grow calm under a golden afternoon light. With his hat in hand and thoughts miles away, he walks alone, a man between what he has done and what he must yet become. Inside their home, Mary watches from the window, her face lit with quiet understanding. She knows this stillness is not surrender. It is reflection. Lincoln reads, writes, and listens to the wind against the door. Every pause in his life becomes a gathering of strength. Though the town sees him resting, something deeper is forming, a purpose that will not stay silent for long. Springfield's rhythm slows into gentle domestic life. The Lincoln's home fills with the sound of children's laughter echoing through wooden halls and the scent of ink from Lincoln's study. By lamplight, he reads aloud to Mary, his voice steady but distant, thoughts often wandering beyond the horizon. The warmth of family steadies him, yet sorrow quietly shadows the corners of their joy. Lincoln learns that love and loss often walk side by side, that strength is not loud but patient. In these tender years, the seeds of empathy take root, shaping the man who will one day speak for a nation's heart. The world around him changes, and so must he. After years of silence, Lincoln steps once more into the crowded halls of debate. His voice, sharpened by reflection, carries the calm of conviction. Neighbors gather as he speaks with clarity born of quiet years, not seeking fame, but truth. Each word bridges reason and compassion, and those who hear him sense something rare. A man guided not by ambition alone, but by conscience. The courtroom gives way to the wider stage, and Springfield's familiar streets begin to echo with the first clear notes of destiny. The country's temper rises. Voices grow sharp in every town square. Lincoln watches, listens, measures every phrase as if weighing the nation's soul. At night, he walks beneath the lamplight, coat drawn tight against the wind, burdened by questions too vast for sleep. Yet within that silence, resolve hardens like steel. He begins to write again, thoughtful, deliberate, precise, words that will guide him toward the threshold of leadership. It is here, between uncertainty and courage, that Abraham Lincoln begins to understand his calling was never about power, but service. The summer sun settles low over the Illinois prairie. Dust rises from the ground as men, women, and children gather. Farmers, merchants, soldiers home from service, all drawn by the promise of words. The wooden platform creaks beneath its weight as Abraham Lincoln steps forward, tall and steady, his black coat pressed, his stovepipe hat in hand. Across from him stands Stephen Douglas, polished and proud, the seasoned statesman of the hour. Lincoln's eyes scan the crowd, faces sunburned, eager, uncertain. He knows many came not out of loyalty, but curiosity. They expect fire, but he offers calm. When he begins to speak, his voice carries evenly across the open field, deep, measured, without ornament. He speaks of law and liberty, of the promise written into the heart of the Republic. His words are not thunder, but steady rain, falling softly, soaking deep. Cameras would capture none of this, yet every listener feels the moment shaping into memory. Some lean forward, hats in their hands, their expressions lit by conviction they cannot name. Lincoln's hands move with subtle rhythm, a man not performing, but reasoning aloud with his nation. His language is